When you look at the state of the world today, the burning forests, the rising oceans, the geopolitical tension, the fragility of the financial system, it is easy to feel that things are falling apart. It is easy to feel that we are driving toward a cliff. But who is driving the car? We tend to look for villains. We blame a specific president, a corrupt billionaire, or a rogue nation. But the truth is far more disturbing. The destruction of the world is not the result of a few bad apples. It is the result of a perfectly functioning machine. A machine designed to do exactly what it is doing: convert the living world into dead capital. Today, we are going to conduct a forensic investigation. We are going to answer the ultimate question: who is destroying the world? We are not going to rely on conspiracy theories. We are going to rely on data, on the concept of global systemic risk attribution. We will peel back the layers of our civilization to identify the agents and the architectures that are structurally mandated to push us toward collapse. From the philosophical roots of exploitation to the boardroom decisions of state-owned giants, from the investment portfolios of the super-rich to the unregulated laboratories developing artificial intelligence, we will name the destroyers. This is the financial coin historian, and this is the anatomy of the end. To understand who is destroying the world, we must look at the operating system of our civilization. The primary destroyer is not a person. It is an idea. It is the unrestrained growth imperative. For centuries, our global economy has been built on a single, non-negotiable premise: infinite expansion. Success is measured by one metric: gross domestic product, or GDP. If GDP goes up, we are winning. If it goes down, we are in crisis. But here's the fundamental contradiction: we live on a finite planet. You cannot have infinite economic expansion, which requires the consumption of energy and matter within a closed ecological system. This philosophical license for exploitation dates back to the 17th century. Thinkers like Descartes convinced the Western world that nature was merely inert matter, a machine to be mastered by humans. This view relegated every living thing, forests, oceans, animals, to the status of disposable objects available for human utilization. Industrial capitalism formalized this into a global mandate. The system demands that companies grow every quarter. It demands that nations increase their output every year. To achieve this, we must extract more resources, burn more energy, and produce more waste. Scientists have defined the planetary boundaries, 9 critical systems that keep the Earth stable for life. As of today, we have transgressed 6 of these 9 boundaries. We have breached the safe operating space for humanity. When a system structurally requires the consumption of its own support base to function, that system itself is the primary agent of destruction. The growth imperative is the engine. Everything else is just the gears. If the system provides the mandate, who executes the order? Who are the hands that physically dismantle the planet? They are the proximate agents, and they are far more concentrated than you might believe. The climate crisis is often framed as a problem of individual responsibility, you leaving the lights on or driving a car. But the data tells a different story. Studies demonstrate that approximately 71% of global industrial greenhouse gas emissions since 1988 can be traced to just 100 fossil fuel producers. These are the entities that dig the carbon out of the ground and sell it to the world. And when we look at the top of this list, we find a surprising reality. It is not just greedy private corporations, it is the state itself. Saudi Aramco. The state-owned oil giant of Saudi Arabia is the #1 corporate emitter. If it were a country, it would be the 4th largest polluter in the world. Coal India, the world's largest government-owned coal producer. CHN Energy, a Chinese state-owned mining titan. Gazprom, the Russian state energy giant. Alongside them are the Western supermajors: ExxonMobil, Chevron, Shell, and BP. This reveals a critical structural failure called the state-corporate nexus. Governments are supposed to regulate pollution. But because the biggest polluters are state-owned enterprises, the governments have a direct economic stake in the destruction. They rely on the revenue from these companies to fund their budgets. The regulator and the polluter are the same person. This conflict of interest paralyzes action. These 100 entities are the bottleneck of global risk. They are the physical mechanism through which the growth imperative destroys the atmosphere. But why haven't we stopped them? We have known about climate change for decades. The science is clear. The technology exists. Why is the policy window closed? This brings us to the third layer, the agents of obstruction. These are the actors who actively work to preserve the destructive status quo. They do this through 2 primary mechanisms: extreme inequality and organized disinformation. The carbon billionaires. We often talk about the 1% in terms of money, but we need to talk about them in terms of carbon. Research indicates that the world's super-rich 1% are responsible for more carbon emissions than the poorest 66% of humanity combined. This isn't just about private jets and super yachts, though those are part of it. The real damage comes from investment emissions. The ultra-wealthy control the capital that funds the fossil fuel infrastructure. A select group of 125 billionaires invest so heavily in polluting industries that their personal carbon footprint is millions of times higher than the average citizen. They are essentially betting on the destruction of the carbon budget. By prioritizing profit over planetary survival, they are locking us into a high warming scenario. The merchants of doubt. Then there is the disinformation machine. For decades, vested interests have funded sophisticated campaigns to confuse the public. Just as the tobacco industry hid the link between smoking and cancer, the fossil fuel industry seeded doubt about climate science. Today, this obstruction manifests as organized disinformation designed to erode trust in institutions. If the public is confused, anxious, or apathetic, they cannot demand change. Political will evaporates. This paralysis is not an accident. It is a purchased outcome. While the elite obstruct, the nations of the world are locked in a standoff. This is the geopolitical layer of destruction. The crisis is global, but the responsibility is not equal. Historically, developed nations like the United States and Europe are responsible for the vast majority of the cumulative emissions that are currently heating the planet. They built their wealth by burning the sky. However, today the trajectory has shifted. Emerging economies like China and India are now major annual emitters, arguing that they have a right to develop just as the West did. This creates the common but differentiated responsibilities, CBDR, stalemate. Developing nations demand that the rich world pay for the damage they caused, what is known as climate debt. The rich world refuses to pay the full bill, arguing that everyone must cut emissions now. This argument over fairness, over who pays for adaptation and loss and damage, acts as a secondary destroyer. While diplomats argue over ledgers, the planet passes irreversible tipping points. The inability of sovereign states to cooperate on a shared threat is a systemic failure of the highest order. Finally, we must look at the risks that could end civilization not in decades, but in minutes. These are the existential risk custodians. The nuclear gun. The threat of nuclear war has not gone away. It has merely faded from the headlines, but the risk is as high today as it was during the Cold War. There are approximately 2,100 nuclear warheads maintained on high alert status by the US, Russia, and others. These weapons are ready to launch on short notice. The architecture of mutually assured destruction places the fate of the world in the hands of a few political leaders and military systems. A single misunderstanding, a single radar glitch, or a single moment of geopolitical madness could trigger a termination event. The custodians of these weapons are holding a gun to the head of the world. The ungoverned labs, AI and bio. Alongside the old threat of nukes, a new threat is rising, unchecked technological acceleration. Advanced artificial intelligence and biotechnology are developing at a pace that outstrips our ability to govern them. The governance architecture for AI is described by experts as nascent. We are building digital minds that may soon surpass human intelligence, yet there is no mandatory, enforceable framework to ensure they remain safe. Tech companies are racing for dominance, prioritizing speed over safety, in a classic arms race dynamic. Similarly, in biotechnology, the democratization of DNA synthesis means that the ability to create engineered pandemics is becoming accessible to more actors. The gap between technological capability and institutional wisdom is the valley of death. So, who is destroying the world? It is not a single villain. It is a hierarchy. It starts with the growth imperative, the economic philosophy that treats the planet as an infinite resource. It is executed by the Proximate agents, the 100 state and private corporations that physically extract the carbon. It is protected by the agents of obstruction, the ultra-wealthy, and the disinformation networks that prevent reform. It is deadlocked by geopolitical sovereignty, where nations fight over debt rather than survival. And it is threatened by the existential custodians, who hold the keys to nuclear and digital annihilation. Understanding this architecture is the only way to dismantle it. We cannot fix the world by simply recycling or buying an electric car. We must address the systemic drivers. We must demand a shift from growth to well-being. We must enforce the polluter pays principle. We must govern technology before it governs us. The destruction is not inevitable. It is a choice made by specific agents within a specific system. And choices can be changed. This is the financial coin historian. History shows us how empires fall. It is up to us to ensure that this time the empire of humanity does not fall with them.